People generally enjoy being in my company because, one, they never quite know what's going to happen. It probably could go a little bit bonkers, but also, there's just going to be good energies, good vibes.
There's the flamboyant outfits. There's skimpy short shorts in freezing conditions. There's posing on top of a frozen lake in your swimmers. Where has that colourful, flowery persona come from?
Who wants to be the same as if you're the same as everyone else, you just kind of fit into a groove. And if you can be unique, that's where you get to shine.
A huge part of your story is the formation of Project Awesome.
I literally lived it because I just knew it was having such a profound effect on people, such a profound effect on myself. And within a few years though, I had massive burnout. I probably had a breakdown at that point.
But you were at the beginning of this wave, one of the founding forefathers of free, exciting communities, which I think in every single one that exists now, I sense there's a bit of Danny Bent in every one of them.
I mean, that feels like the greatest compliment ever.
You were once in the top 100 happiest people.
I started getting lots of businesses wanting me to come and talk about my form of happiness. They start referring to you as the happiness guru, and of course, there's a pressure on that as well. You're spending your life trying to make other people happy rather than being authentically yourself.
These are all the projected images of you, but who is the real Danny Bent?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've done all these amazing external journeys, but this last year I've been on quite an internal journey, which is probably the most exceptional of them all.
What have you been covering?
Oh man.
Can I start with something a bit silly?
Yeah, go for it.
What do I have to do in order to break your Guinness World Record of Bog Snorkelling Triathlon?
Oh man. You have to. There's a alternative games championship in Wales, and I'll butcher the name, but it's something like Clinited Wells. It's got a lot of letters in the name, and the bog snorkeling world record I have is for the triathlon. So you start with a run up a mountain, a local mountain there, run back down again. You jump into the bog. You have to do 2 lengths of this bog that is peat land that they just cut out the earth from it, and it just sits like dirty water with eels in it. They found a dead sheep in it, water scorpions, you name it, it's in there. And you get out of there and then you do a really, really technical mountain bike. And my sister just said to me once, like, do you want to do a triathlon? And I said, yeah, why not? Because I was doing loads of triathlon at the time. What she didn't tell me was that she'd got a kind of snorkel mask and fins that I was going to have to wear in the swim section of this bog. And it just so happens that the two of us both broke the world record doing the course. And so you just have to get to the World Alternative Games and take part in the Bog Snorkelling Triathlon.
It's a record that's stood since 2010.
Yeah.
It's quite a length of time.
Well, at the time, both me and my sister were doing age group triathlon for Great Britain. So the very lowest levels, echelons of international triathlon. So we were both pretty decent.
I mean, you say the lowest levels, but still you're competing against people who are very athletic.
I mean, it's amazing for me, especially because my childhood, when I was going through school, my surname is Bent. At the time, I used to get quite a lot of Mickey taking out. People took the Mickey out of me for everything, but my surname was one of those strands that just kind of came up and up and up. And to then be representing your country with it written across your bottom was a real, like, mega proud moment for me. Like my mum had said to me before, like, if you want to change your name, it's fine, we can do it. And but now, I obviously didn't want to do it anyway, but I'm pleased I didn't.
You'd never be the Danny Bent you are now if it wasn't for that.
That's exactly it. I think there were, it's really funny that this last year I've been on a kind of quite an internal journey. Like, I've done all these amazing external journeys, but I've been on this internal journey, which is probably the most exceptional of them all. And remembering back at school and thinking, I knew I had some tough times, but I was thinking back to sixth form, which is obviously getting to the end of school, and I still had some anxieties going into certain rooms with certain kids in them. And I didn't remember this until this last year. And it's been very, very eye-opening, and yeah, maybe it explains quite a lot of the stuff you do to prove yourself going forward as someone that can achieve and someone that can be tough and all these sorts of things.
Does some of that from your childhood stem from being ginger?
Well, the funny thing is, when I was at school, I had really long blonde hair. It kind of fell in ringlets. Like, it's the kind of hair that a girl going to a wedding would kind of aspire to have, the kind of ringlets that I had. And so I had blonde hair, but I've got a very ginger beard. But I do still class myself as a ginger. I've definitely got ginger skin. I have to wear kind of factor 1000 to stop myself getting burnt whenever the sun comes out just a tiny bit. So it wasn't that definitely wasn't one of the things that was targeted at me, but it does seem that I know some of your past people who you interviewed are gingers, your Sean Conways, your Dave Cornthwaite, who you've worked with before. It is interesting that a lot of people that are doing this kind of mad things are ginger. So whether it's the gene or whether it's the experience.
I think it's about fighting adversity certainly from my childhood, being bullied as a kid, and going through a lot of emotion and over time realizing that I could turn the one thing that I hated into something that would actually make me unique.
Yeah. I mean, it's just such a powerful statement, because who wants to be the same as if you're the same as everyone else, you just kind of fit into a groove. And if you can be unique, that's where you get to shine. But it also does lead to some struggles along the way.
Well, I chose the bog snorkeling as a great example. I think it really highlights the heart of what you are and what you aspire to do, which is lots of different crazy, cool things. Your adventurous CV includes chess boxing, ice swimming, pogoing across Togo because it rhymed. You've been on the Special Forces Ultimate Hell Week TV series that was many years ago. You've run the Monopoly board. You talked about your competing age group triathlon. You've also set up one of the most colourful and energetic fitness communities in the UK. Lots of different things, lots of colour in all of them.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I love how you've picked that out, the bog snorkeling, because it does. The person who held the record before me was a British triathlete. So I had to be tough and strong and resilient and fearless to do it. But also you have to be a little bit bonkers as well. And there's definitely some polarity in the things that I've done. It does, like Special Forces. The going on there, most of the people looked at me and they probably laughed a little bit. I had actual flowers on my shoes at this time. These beautiful, beautiful shoes. I loved them. I had a kind of a flowery shirt on, my cap on and everything. I looked about as far away.
This was like a British Army training camp.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it wasn't British. It wasn't just the British. It was, we got 2 days with 6 different Special Forces units. It was the Russians, the Australian, the English SAS, Filipino, Israeli, and each of these guys, they were given an instruction: try and break these people, the toughest and fittest in the UK. I put that in kind of inverted commas because at the time, especially, I didn't believe it, because there was a load of people beating me in races and things like this, even at the thing that I chose to be good at. But on the show, I kind of realized that, yeah, I am one of the toughest. I can be really, really resilient. And partly it is that flowery, flamboyant, colourful nature of me that got me through, because I was just like, this is fun. This is a game. And rather than having an ego that's built on being really tough and really macho, I think that was going to break. Anyone who came in with that sort of idea got broken. And the 3 people at the end, myself, Claire and Hugh, we were the 3 that were a little bit more flamboyant and a little bit different. And yes, we got broken physically, we got wounds that started to grow because we weren't getting fed enough. And we were kind of slowly eating away at our own being. But we were still able to do it with a bit of a smile and a bit of a laugh. And at the end, I am kind of jumping way ahead of ourselves, but at the end of that, the guys from the British SAS who were with us the whole time, kind of evaluating us and assessing us, said, would you like to join the SAS? And I was like, no. But it was a real compliment to be asked to be one of those people that you kind of look upon as kind of superheroes and that sort of thing.
But where is that colourful, flowery persona come from? What made you want to have that as part of an identity that you could put forward and be proud of, to put yourself in front of television cameras and these really hardcore macho army people who are probably not used to anywhere near that kind of world at all?
I don't really know where that came from, the flamboyancy. I definitely at school, if we made something out of clay, made a character out of clay, mine would have a massive Mohican and anything I could do to make it slightly different. And I do remember Mum and Dad coming back from parents' evening and saying that they were able to pick mine out very, very quickly because it was different. And so, I mean, I do think that a lot of who we are comes from this childhood. And maybe I just took that as a little bit of a stroke, a little bit of a nod to me that being different was good. Or was it because I always was different and I was very lucky to have parents that were encouraging of that and weren't trying to make sure I fitted in a box. And with that, I've been able to grow, and it's, maybe it's been a little bit of a disguise as well. A mask I put on there's a vulnerable child inside. And this mask has helped me deal with things like SAS people all dressed in black, or whether it's the kids at school that are giving you grief. Maybe this was a way of deflecting that, but whatever it is, it's been a constant, and it's still there now. And it's something I pride, I don't know whether pride is the right word, but it's something I really love about myself. And it feels like that is a expression of my true self.
It's definitely something that is a huge part of your brand. And it's something that has been used to mobilize huge groups of people through your infectious energy that comes out of this brand of being flamboyant and wearing what you want and being colourful and just putting your best self out there. A huge part of your story is the formation of Project Awesome, which is a free health and fitness community that's mostly based in London, but has, because it's now many years old, has kind of networked into many areas of the UK, because so many people have had their own personal journeys through that community, and people have been linked and connected from all across the UK now. This was something that I guess, I think you were inspired by a similar group over in Boston. Is that correct?
Yep. Yeah, I was over in Boston and I was taking part in something called November Project, which is pretty flamboyant, really go-getting. It's very American fitness. Lots of high fives, lots of hugs. And I was so taken by it. And I just thought, I want to have this in London so that I can take part in it. But no one else knew about it other than me, so I had to create it.
This was over 10 years ago now.
Yeah, it's probably about 10 years ago, I think. And I just set it up. I called it Project Awesome. It was, I don't really, when I'm doing these things, I think this is why everything that I've done is just, there's so many weird things. And just because I don't really think about anything, I just get a feeling that this is the right thing to do and I go and do it. And there's not a lot of brain involved in that. But I set it up, and the first one, I think we had about 4 people turned up, 4 mates. And then I kind of carried it on, and the people who were mates stopped coming because they were just supporting me. And maybe one person would show up or 2 people would show up to these workouts, and they would be running up hills or running up steps and things like this. Just fun little workouts. But within probably a year, we were getting hundreds of people show up at 6:30 in the morning outside City Hall, Sadiq Khan would walk past, he'd give us a wave and we would kind of wave back, and I would just I'd run up to him and like, "You're always welcome to join." And he never joined, but he gave us a wave every morning that we did it. And it was just I just think human beings, all we want is community, authentic, real community. And Project Awesome probably wasn't for everyone, but those people that it was for, it was such a powerful, powerful community that celebrated them for who they were and welcomed them no matter who they were, and connected them with individuals no matter who they were. And I think some of that comes from me at the top, but it also comes from the people that were the first people to come, the people that's kind of founded it with me and grew with it. And I think, you know, it's one of the things, like this flamboyancy is just something that's in me. So I'm a very authentic, I like to think of myself as a really authentic person, and it encourages other people to be authentic. And then if you turn up to a workout where everyone's just being authentic and talking about themselves without any ego, without any mask, without any layers upon layers upon layers, you're encouraged to do that yourself. And that is such a beautiful, beautiful feeling. And I got messages from officers of people who used to work, or they'd come, the bosses of companies would come down and be like, "Well, my staff have been coming to your workouts," and when they turn up, they literally explode through the door. You can feel their energy. They're smiling. They're happy when they've come to Project Awesome. And if it's not a Project Awesome day, they don't come in that way. And then they all come down and experience it, and then they'll kind of say, "Oh, now I understand." And I think it's something you have to experience too. We chanted about unicorns and about pixie dust and about rainbows. We jumped up and down together. We hugged a lot. And it wasn't about the fitness. It was just about the community, and the people that turned up to this community accidentally got incredibly fit. And we've had people that have gone on to represent the country and to do crazy adventures themselves. And it was just a supportive network that if you said, "I'm thinking this," lots of people will, people listening at home will be thinking, think of something completely radical that you'd like to do. And if you tell your parents, you tell your friends, you tell your brothers and sisters, quite a lot of people will put you down and just say, "Don't be ridiculous. This is stupid." Whereas Project Awesome was a group of people that were like, "Yes, this sounds like an awesome idea," and would give you the backing and support you no matter what you were doing. And loads of businesses have been started from it. And I would say businesses started, but people have started living their lives through it.
This all came at a time when there wasn't much out there in terms of free fitness communities. There was very, very little. And I say that because 10 years later, certainly I know I can talk from London experience, you can't move from being trampled by a fitness group running past. On many days, it just seems like there's like this tribal warfare going on between a myriad of different groups who are just running past each other, all completely happy. So many of them are free. But you were at the beginning of this wave, and it was your decision to set that up, to start early mornings with just 3-4 people, with that belief that something would grow from what you'd experienced over in America.
Yeah, I do sometimes look back on it, and I spend some time in London, and I do see these tribes that are kind of going around. And I know the guys that set up Midnight Runners, they started at Project Awesome, but they also like partying, and they like being out they like running in the evening. And so they went and set up Midnight Runners, and Midnight Runners is now like all over the world. It's huge. And there's a little that I do look at it and think I could have been bitter about that, because it's much more successful than Project Awesome. But what did I set Project Awesome up for? To give people this community, to give them a place to exercise their bodies, to give them a place to exercise their minds and their wants and their authentic selves. And now there's all these other ones doing exactly that. So the reach of the core values that I had when I set up Project Awesome are reaching infinitely into society rather than the limited reach that Project Awesome would have had. So it feels like a celebration, and I feel great pride in what has happened. And it's not just those tribes that have been set up by people. The brands were like, wow, this is a cool idea. And now all the brands have them as well, which, yes, theirs maybe isn't quite as authentic and giving because there is this product behind it. But at the end of the day, it's giving people community, and it's giving people a place where they can celebrate themselves and get themselves physically fit. And so again, these ones are just ticking all the boxes of why I did it in the first place. And it felt like a revolution. I felt like I was standing on the barricades, kind of shouting for the masses, shouting for the people. And now that's become the norm. And I'm super mega proud of it, and it gives me a little tingle inside just feeling it.
I honestly, genuinely believe that there is a bit of you in Midnight Runners, but also amongst all these other communities that just needed to see what could be done by someone first. One of the founding kind of forefathers of free, exciting, colourful, loud, flamboyant communities, which you just so happen to get fit at by attending as a result. I think in every single one that exists, certainly around London now, I sense there's a bit of Danny Bent in every one of them. Whether they are aware of that or not, I think that's true.
I mean, that feels like the greatest compliment ever. So thank you.
Because I mean, I also should give you my biggest, deepest regret, and that is that I never attended a Project Awesome during your tenure. At the time, I think I certainly remember you being around, and I think we must have met at a talk somewhere, and you extended an invite, and that's the first time I got around to knowing about it. It's just 6:30 a.m. in central London was a big ask for me at that time. I think now I'm a different person, but at that time I knew myself, and I knew if I got up and did fitness super early in the morning, I crashed later on in the afternoon. And so I prioritized my working day. But there's another instance where I think the North Face had one called Never Stop London. And maybe like 8 years ago, I remember I looked in my Eventbrite and I had a ticket that to go to their events. But I never went to that one. And there was something really out there about me living in East London at that time, and going into central London for something was a big step out of my comfort zone. I was an East London guy. I just cycle around East London. Going even down to like Tower Bridge was like a mission. That was like a grand day out for me at that time. And that was just what I was comfortable with and my knowledge of London at that time. But when COVID hit and we all got outside, and then when restrictions were relaxed and I could go out and run with someone else, I didn't have anyone to run with. And I was like, hang on, I've gone through many, many years of my life running as a solitary runner. And then now I'm in need of someone close to run with. And so since that moment, I made steps in my life to go out and find communities. A run club, a traditional run club, an athletics club, was not for me. I did go to one session. It wasn't the nicest experience. There was something about that just didn't fit with me. And I think it's now testament to what these communities offer, and what you offered at that time is that there's so many of these now free communities that aren't run clubs, but they still meet to go run and do an exercise, because they've worked out that, you know, people don't want to kind of get asked what speed their 5K is, or, you know, what distance they run. They just want to be welcomed with warm, open arms, knowing that, you know, whatever they want to do, they can come and do it with you.
Yeah, how cool is this for anyone who's in London who's listening, who maybe is still feeling that pinch of loneliness that COVID and lockdown and all those sorts of things created in their lives, that just to hear that there is lots of things out there that are if running is your thing. But the fact is, they exist now. It's not just running; it's just spread to everything. And so, and Midnight Runners offers something different to what Project Awesome. It's a little bit probably. If I say sexier, I'm not putting Project Awesome down, but it's that kind of night going out type thing rather than going for a coffee in the morning type affair.
That's, I think, where my body is more suited, is the evening entertainment as opposed to early morning.
And just going back to you saying like 6:30 was hard, it was really hard. And I was only doing it 3 times a week, but I wasn't getting paid for this. But then I spent all the time outside of it because I just knew it was having such a profound effect on people, such a profound effect on myself. I literally lived it. And within a few years of doing this, because you have to get up at 5:30 to get there.
Yeah, that was the thing for me. It wasn't the 6:30 meeting; it was the 5:30 wake-up call.
Exactly. And you, as the leader of this community, I started. It was kind of like they were my children, and I wanted to, if they were doing a performance or they had something going on, I wanted to support it. And so I ended up starting to do lots of evenings as well. So I kind of narrowed my evening sleep and narrowed my morning sleep. And within a few years, though, I had like massive burnout. I probably had a breakdown at that point. And that there were loads and loads of lessons within that. Just simply, I was broken, and I was wishing actually that this is such a ridiculous thing, and it's kind of painful for me, but also for anyone to hear it, I suspect, especially certain people. But I was kind of wishing that I would get some sort of disease that would mean I couldn't, a cancer or something like this, that would mean I couldn't do Project Awesome anymore, because I felt so much commitment to the people. But at that point, I wasn't able to ask for help. I thought it was all on me. And I got a kind of a group of 4 people who were, those people that were below me that were looking after the newbies when they showed up and things like this. And I kind of told them that how I was feeling and that I was going to have to step down from Project Awesome. They were like, "Oh, that's okay. We'll take it on for you." I was like, "Oh my God, why didn't I think of this before and bring those people in before it became too late for me?" And if I'd done that, maybe I'd still be doing it. But I had to step away because my whole being was invested in it. And I'd lived for a year on credit cards, and then I lived for a year rent free. My amazing landlady just said, "I believe in what you're doing. You don't need to pay my rent until you can slowly pay it off. Just pay me back by the time I retire," or something like this, she was saying. And Emily Stenning, that was. And so I put myself under a lot of pressure, financial, physical, the responsibility for the people. But I should have just reached out way earlier. Now I do reach out way earlier if I'm feeling that kind of slight pinch. I feel it, and I'm like, okay, I need to ask for help now. And really, that really is in the last year that I've really been able to do that. And if I'm honest, probably the last month where I'm like, okay, you need to ask and not be afraid. It doesn't show, asking for help isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength, I think. And those people took over, and I was able to take a rest. But it was intense at the time.
It's never been the same without you. This is when you moved out of London to Sheffield.
Well, I wouldn't say I just lived. I was still living in London, but I had to take a step away. It was kind of like your teenager is going to uni, kind of rather than I was stepping away from it. But I couldn't go and be around them because I wanted to. As soon as I did that, I wanted to give more again.
You were all or nothing. Basically.
All or nothing. I am all or nothing, and I think a lot of people, including doctors, have said that it's incredibly likely that I've got ADHD, and that that is a kind of sign of that, 1 or 0. And I had to take it to 0 because I couldn't go at 50% or 25%. If I was there, I would be giving everything. yeah, so I was still in London, and yes, it's not the same because is my child, and it was born through the love of me of what it was going to give other people, but it moves and it pulses in different directions as different people get involved in it, and it's not the same, but that doesn't mean it's not as good. And because I'm not behind it, pushing it very hard, and because so many other ones are out there, there's less people come. But that's the same for all of these communities. Like I was in Boston with November Project, and I think they had 1,500 people show up to one workout, and now they're maybe down to 30 and 40 showing up. It's just a way of the times kind of thing, and so those people are just spread out through different communities now. It's so fun talking about it. Project Awesome. It's definitely something a time in my life that I just loved so much. It was just so powerful, really dreamy.
This is the thing. You set this thing up, not knowing what it would become and where it would take you, but you were riding this wave 3 times a week. Early mornings, just knowing that you were getting so much out of it. But I guess there comes a point where you're never really sure where it's going and what it's taking from you underlyingly. Yeah.
I think that you could apply that to life. For me, my life is sometimes like that. I'm like, I know this is great. It's good, really good for me. And you're just like firing along and you're just seeing the difference it's making to people. And you're doing this for free, but the feeling of someone coming to you and saying, Dan, I don't think I would be alive if it wasn't for Project Awesome. A message like that one. And
did that happen?
Yeah. Yeah. People who came out of an extremely depressed place because of Project Awesome and those people that they would meet up with every single day or every 3 times a week. And so many people would come up with stories like that. And this changed my life. It was incredibly powerful for me and for other people. Crazy. But that's a story of my life, I think, is there are loads of people who you've had a profound effect on. And even the fact that I can say that to you now it means that I'm taking steps forward in my life and my belief of self and my feeling of worthiness to be enough. I would have kind of discounted it before and just been like, oh, that was just the path that they were taking on that was their trajectory, nothing that I was affecting or anything like this. But now I can see that's not the case. There was definitely, I was having a profound effect on people's lives, well-being, mental health, which is amazing.
Do you think you could set something up like this in Sheffield? Do you have the energy to kind of go through that again?
I've been asking myself that ever since I moved to Sheffield. And I would say it's just this last weekend. I've been thinking people in Yorkshire are different from people in London. There is definitely much more of a kind of laddie. There's a mask. There's a Yorkshire mask that I think a lot of people wear. Whereas in London, yes, there may be a flamboyant mask that people wear, but they like to be around that kind of flamboyancy. There's a toughness to people in the north, to people in Yorkshire. And I thought it just doesn't fit. But it's only probably this last weekend that I've been thinking this is something that could be absolutely brilliant in Sheffield. It could allow for masks to be taken off and allow for people to have that moment. I think it'd still have to be early in the mornings. Maybe not quite as early, but to give people that opportunity to be a bit more of an authentic self. So it's definitely something that's on my mind. And I think within the next few months, if I don't have a go at setting it up, I'll be surprised. Because really, I love fitness. I love my own feeling my own body be strong. And as you get older, it kind of becomes more important to be doing fitness, because at 70, 80, 90, I want to be able to, even if it's only to be able to fall over and not break myself and to be able to get up again. And I think that's definitely on my mind as I get into my 40s. But also, what a great offering. It might just affect one person. And if that's the case, it's still worthwhile.
Just jumping in briefly to say, if you've got this far, you're probably a fan of the show. And it would be great if you wouldn't mind confirming that love by following or subscribing to this podcast. It takes just one click from you, but it really does make a huge difference in getting more people to find this show. Thank you. During the height of your time being the ringleader of this colourful, vibrant health fitness community, you were put in the top 100 happiest people who make life better for others. Is that something you're happy with?
Yes, I mean, that was a transformative moment in my life. Just a nod. I think one of the TV channels that is also under the same umbrella as The Independent came down and ran a little thing about Project Awesome. And they went back and told The Independent that I needed to be in this list, and went to a party where the 100 happiest people in the UK all got invited to it, which you can imagine was a blast. And I just thought it was a nod to say, you were kind of nod that said thank you from the world. But actually it really transformed my life in initially in an absolutely brilliant way. But then maybe it kind of folded back on itself. And so I started getting lots of businesses wanting me to come and talk about my form of happiness, or to come and run Project Awesomes at businesses. And then you're like, oh, well, okay, now I'm actually earning something, and I can start paying back my landlady and paying off those credit cards that I put all the financial weight of Project Awesome onto. But then, of course, people were calling me the happiness guru, and I was going to get flaunted from Google to Twitter to HSBC to Nike. I toured America, I had to go about 7 talks with Nike. I was like, this is absolutely mental. But then they start referring to you as the happiness guru, and of course there's a pressure on that as well.
To always be happy.
Yeah, maybe not to always be happy, but you're getting so many positive reinforcements for being this happy character that you almost subconsciously take it on. Like, I have to be. Yeah. But it's, I don't think it was a conscious decision. It was just it was subconscious. Like, oh, I keep getting this. Like, you're getting financial rewards for it. You're getting social rewards and community, like relationship with people, not relationships with other people, like sexual relationships or anything. But there were so many positives coming from it that this little part of me was like, right, use this. This is a great shield for everything in life. And eventually that becomes a toll, and you're spending your life trying to make other people happy rather than being authentically yourself. And that's not a way to live. Yes, it's brilliant to make other people happy. It's brilliant to change other people's lives, but not at the expense of yours, because if you are doing that, there's a limited time frame where you're going to, like, yes, the next year you may still have a lot of people tell you you've changed their life, but just like with Project Awesome, a few years after that, you're not around anymore to be having that effect on people, because I wasn't looking after myself. And again, it comes with a little bit of age, a little bit of wisdom. Just like a nod to that. Getting older is absolutely amazing. And our community our society doesn't celebrate age in the same way as maybe a Japanese culture might do. I just think that's really interesting to touch on anyway, that getting older is awesome. You don't have to put Botox into your lips or into your forehead or worry about losing your hair, because you've just got so many more experiences than these younger people, and this definitely in my eyes should be celebrated. Maybe that's because I'm getting older. It's kind of, I'm trying to encourage people to give me a bit more celebration. But yeah, I had to kind of turn and look inward, because it got to a stage, and I do think this isn't just about Project Autumn. It's not about my later years. I think in my early years, I was probably making sure mum and dad were happy, making sure my sisters were happy, making sure my friends were happy. But I was getting to a stage where I'd walk into a room, because I was so conscious of everyone else, I would meet people and I'd know things about them before they told me, like hardships in their life. You can just feel it from their demeanor, the slight nuances of their faces and their body movement. And I'd walk into a room and I would be able to tell you exactly what is going on with everyone else. I'd be so aware, pinpoint aware. But the one space in that room that I didn't know what was going on was inside myself. This frame of me, I didn't know what I was feeling. I just knew what everyone else was feeling, and I was judging myself of what they were feeling. And so this last year I've been spending a lot of time trying to turn that slowly, like a kind of a heavy tanker, moving it slowly so that it starts looking inside. And I think that's only just in the last few weeks started happening. And that's another amazing, beautiful experience that I'm getting to go through right now.
What have you been uncovering?
Really just those things. The fact that I took everyone's happiness, like especially I think my mum's, maybe my dad's. It was everyone is experiencing trauma in some way, some form. And I, as a young child that thought, you think the world revolves around you, don't you? I thought it was my responsibility to make mum happy, to make dad happy, to make sure my sisters were happy. And then really the biggest part of that is then going forward into relationships. It was like, I have to make sure the people I'm in a relationship with are happy as well. And
was that by being the happiest version of yourself and projecting that to them?
I think that was part of it. That's definitely
so
part of it.
So they could see that you were happy, and
yes,
that made them happy.
Yes, exactly. I think that's definitely the case, especially if you look back into my childhood. But it also, it kind of became that I would do everything for a partner. So whatever they wanted was the thing we did. Whatever they wanted to eat, we ate. And I lost touch of what I actually wanted. And if you'd asked me, what is it that you've got to, it's your 40th birthday or something. What do you want to happen? I didn't even know. All I wanted to know was the things I actually said some things when someone said this to me, and I was like, and they were like, what are they for? And I was like, well, they just make sure everyone else is happy around me. And this was that moment that clicked of, you don't even know what you want. You just know what other people want. And you are just bringing as much of that into your life as you can. And there needs to be time where you do it for yourself.
You've spent years of your life on, I guess, a public stage, both physical stage with all the talks that you've been doing, but also on the streets of London when you were leading people who really were absorbing. They needed you. They needed your energy every morning to get them through that session to reward them for their hard work in turning up at that early age, at that early time in the day. So you needed to project this version of yourself that people could absorb. But at what cost was that to you?
Yeah, I think that's the point. I think that people generally enjoy being in my company because, one, they never quite know what's going to happen. It probably could go a little bit bonkers, but also, there's just going to be good energies, good vibes. And yeah, that cost to me is that you don't really exist anymore. You become an avatar, and that avatar is like you're creating it, and then like you do something that has a profound effect on people, so then you do twice as much of that. And yeah, an avatar, a mask, whatever you want to call it, it's you giving a lot and not being even prepared to even consider taking.
There's the flamboyant outfits. There's skimpy short shorts in freezing conditions. There's posing on top of a frozen lake in your swimmers as you go for an ice swim. These are all the projected images of you as this kind of happy-go-lucky, do anything on a whim, infectious energy. But what's inside the real, or who is the real Danny Bent?
Yeah, that's a great question. I still think those things are still me. I do love life and living and doing things is really, really part of my character. And ever since I was really young, I've always dressed quite strangely. I am sitting here in just a chacky bottoms and a red t-shirt right now, but normally it's the more out. And it wasn't like I was making a choice. At school, I was trying so desperately hard to fit in. So desperately hard. And I just could not do it. I was like, right, this is it. This is how I look like I'm part of the gang, part of the culture, part of society. And I look back at photos now and I'm like, oh my goodness me, you look bonkers. Yeah, maybe I was a bit of a lunar love god, whatever, from Harry Potter. Just a very different human being to most people.
You talked about how you had quite supportive parents growing up. What was their advice to you when you were young?
Well, I'll talk about the one piece of advice that came from my dad, which was I was dyslexic, so I had trouble with school, and that kind of ADHD. I was probably getting quite a bit of trouble, and it was like I didn't want to be. Like I was saying, at school, I really wanted to fit in. But I'd come home and I'd be like, this is what's happening, and be upset about how I was doing it with my schoolwork, how things were going socially with that. And my dad's advice at that point was, don't worry what anyone else is doing, just be the best version of yourself. And I really, really love that. I love how they were supportive of who I was in that sense. And if I remember actually I was 16, and I think it was my mum or my dad, I can't remember. One of them said to me, if we're going to love you no matter who or what you are. Like, what a beautiful sentiment that is. And I don't know whether they were questioning my sexuality or whatever it was, and they were just like, whatever's going on with you right now, we love you. And that's beautiful. That's like a kind of pink light wrapping around me at all times. And I actually remember saying it back to my mum, 21, 22 years old. And she was like, yeah, if you became a serial killer, I'll still love you. And I don't know whether that's the case for everyone else, but it was like, okay, that's freedom to do what you want to do and fail in a way, fail, succeed. And they're not going to judge me. And, I'm in my 40s now, and they occasionally say to me when I'm struggling to make sense of the world, like, if you need to come back, just come back here. It's totally fine. And that, again, but that safety net allows you to just reach that little bit further, because underneath that you're going to be caught. They're both just teachers. It's not like they've got the means to change things. It's just they've got the love that can change things. And there's definitely, like, this journey in the last year has been, I've realized that there were times when my mum was unhappy. There were times when my dad was extremely angry, and I'd kind of blanked that out, and I kind of thought, oh yeah, I had a perfect background, a perfect childhood. But that's not the case. Probably no one does. And, I'd blanked that out, and it's just coming back to me, and I'm kind of growing from that realization, and it's allowing me to look at myself slightly differently as well. I feel like I'm kind of talking kind of deeply and looking underneath lots of the things you're talking about, but that's just what's important to me right now. So it's coming out.
Yeah. I think my parents we have similar types of parents. My parents are both teachers. They've also extended that safety net many times, and likewise they do with my sister. There have been things happening in my life that's kind of caused a lot of stress, certainly in the last 6 months. And even though I'm doing well, speaking to someone about this recently, I'd realised, that my mom had taken this situation quite badly. And speaking to someone recently, they said, who's also a parent, they said, a parent is only, or a mother is only as happy as her unhappiest child. And really hit hard, actually, that realizing that they love you so much and want the best in you, and when they see you unhappy, they want to help and intervene, but also they're recognizing that you're an adult now, and they can't help you as much as they can when you were a kid, and supporting you in that sense.
Yeah, it must be so hard. I love that saying. A mother is only as happy as her least happy child. Yeah, that kind of resonates. Probably should give my mum a really big hug next time I see her. She's got 3, so there's always one of us that is feeling a bit grumpy or dealing with.
And things could be going great in your life, but you won't be understanding the conversations they're maybe having with a sibling, or their anxious mind that's maybe not seeing the world through your eyes and worrying about you when actually everything is fine with you.
Yeah.
It's important, I guess, just to check in and just almost reaffirm that you're feeling good and happy and you're comfortable.
Yeah. Yes.
To let them rest assured.
Yeah. I think I actually was sending my mum voice notes on the way over to the studio, and I was literally saying those exact words, because I've been really introspective for the last year, and I've also let her know that there's some things that I'm not happy about. But then it's just like you say, it felt very, very important this morning to say, I seem to be doing great, Mum. I'm like feeling really, really present in my own skin and really present in the world. And I'm feeling positive about work going forward. And it felt really, really lovely to say. Partly because I'm probably worrying about her happiness still, but also she's been very supportive and listened to me, and I've asked her questions and she's answered them honestly. And sometimes that's not been easy for her to answer these questions honestly, of what's gone on in the past and things like this. So, it was lovely to say that to her.
Seems like you've gone on a real journey of understanding your own happiness and what that means to you. But even though you've it's been quite complex over the years. That initial Danny who set up Project Orson, who wanted to make people happy, there is a happy version of yourself that came from genuine within.
Yeah.
What steps can we all take to be that version of happy?
Well, I think the really obvious one is that advice from my dad, just be you. And if you're striving to be someone else, you're going to be second rate. And if you're striving for some target, whether that is to run fast or to earn this amount of money, you get to those targets and you're just like, that's not what that's you're using that to hide underneath. It's giving you some sort of value in a small way, but like you're never, even Usain Bolt got beaten in the 100 meters. It's kind of, there's always going to be someone that's going to make you feel bad about yourself if you hold on to those things. And it's that you can relate that to owning things as well. And I love that kind of statement that the things you own end up owning you. Keep your life simple, but also your own being simple. Like this, I've been going through this, well, I would call it actually like amount of turmoil where I've just been thinking about everything too much. And then I thought I had to think about it more to find that relief. But actually, I just needed to let go and to be and to soothe myself. And I don't have to be doing radical things that get written up in newspapers or get people talking about you. Just sitting with a book, going for a walk and looking at the birds around you. That's soothe your body. I think there's three kind of states we can get into. We can get into drive, and we can get into anxiety, or we can get into soothe. And I think definitely in my life, I've been in drive mode. And if I wasn't in drive mode, I was in anxious mode. And so I jumped back into drive mode. And the soothing part got a little bit ignored. And soothing is just like being present. Get anything you can get into flow with, whether it's like just, I go and I throw clay, and just to hold the clay in your hands and just see what your hands do with it. Don't think I'm going to create this for someone. It's just a process. Anyway, there's one thing. The other thing is, one of the mega things, of course, everyone talks about it, is our phones. There's like, I was listening to someone yesterday, they're just looking at how long they'd been on their phone that day, and it was 7 hours. And I thought, that's a long time to be inside a phone and not to be present outside of it. And it's very, very difficult. They're made to be addictive. So much of business, like I've done lots of things. Project Awesome, we ran across America. We raised £500,000. That was all done through social media. So it's brilliant, but it shouldn't become your whole kind of being. And the avatar you put onto social media shouldn't be the person that you spend most time on. The person that really matters is the one that really exists in the real world. And I think you can just look at life in different ways. Like, of course, there's all the kind of the usual things like journaling about things that you're grateful for, or things that kindness, journaling about kindness. But I just think there's a really simple thing you can do with your mind, and just whatever's happening to you, just try and find a little tiny piece of positivity that can come from it, even in the hardship. Where are you going to grow? Where can you grow because of what you're going through? And it's all in our minds. I think any emotion, if it lasts more than about 12 seconds, it means you're going over it again and again and again. Like, emotions just are fleeting. And it's funny, you kind of look at what animals, and a deer that's been chased by a jaguar or something, it has fear at that point. Of course it does, because it's going to be eaten. The potential is it's going to be eaten. But as soon as the jaguar goes away, the deer stops, just kind of walks on passively again. And it's just letting go of those emotions. It's getting back on with life. And I think we can do that as humans, but it's just much, much harder because we have these analytical brains, brilliant computer systems in our brains that allow us to kind of repeat, and to, if we've gone through a trauma, that can just repeat, not just for days, but for months or for years. And I was listening to a podcast on the way up here about letting go of those things and forgiving, and how being able to forgive is one of the most powerful things you can do for yourself. It really resonated with me. And if I just jump quickly to one more thing that I think really, really helps people and has helped me, is just to be kind to people, and to, even just holding the door open and someone saying thank you feels great, doesn't it? And what I did with Project Awesome, what we did with One Run for Boston, which was the run across America, those things, just being kind to people, giving to people, literally people look at you and their face brightens up because of the effect you're having on their life. And that just makes you feel absolutely wonderful. And it doesn't have to be doing grand things. It doesn't have to be, like I say, it can just be holding the door open. It could be there's a new intern at work and you look after them. You just make sure that their time with the company is a little bit more pleasant. You help them integrate, because they're absolutely panicking coming to the office, I suspect. And if at the end of their time they turn to you and say, thank you, you were the person that made this experience, helped me get through this experience, what a brilliant thing to have offered the world, to have offered them, and for them to feed back to you. And I guess it works in both ways. If someone is doing something that's kind to you, let them know what you're feeling, because we quite often think that everyone knows what's going on the inside, but rarely do they. And so letting people know that you're grateful and the effect they've had is also can have a profound effect on people's lives. And if you do that, if you're kind to people and then the people you're being kind to feed back to you, it can kind of become an ever increasing circle of awesomeness that spreads. It spreads within you. It spreads within community. Like who has been driving along and a car's let them out into the flow of traffic, and you're, oh great, thanks very much. And the next person that's trying to come out, you're like, yeah, I should really do that as well. It's happiness, kindness, they're all contagious. All these things are contagious in the same way as fear, negativity. They're probably all contagious as well. So it's probably quite important that you think about who you're sharing your time with, because if you surround yourself with 7 happy people, you become the 8th happy person. If you surround yourself with 7 bitter people, you'll become the 8th bitter person.
Kindness is a practice, something we need to exercise in daily life, or else it can quite easily get swamped up by other things, some negativities which we have in our own lives, or which we consume through social media or the news. And it's one of those things that you never actually know the true consequences of how much small, kind actions can have in the people around you.
Yeah, I mean, that resonates with my whole life, really. And just seeing what the things that you do, how they affect other people. And it's those people that come to you and they say that this has changed their life, and I guess it just sometimes doesn't even feel like kindness. Sometimes it's, but yes, it can be. People can take what you're doing and feel it as kindness, even if it's just you being your authentic self. But I don't know whether that's relevant or not. But it is definitely, it's like everything. I love thinking of things like, every morning, every night, you brush your teeth. There's not a direct consequence of brushing your teeth when you're actually doing it. Yes, it cleans your teeth, but it's a kind of thing that accumulates over time. You make sure you keep all those things looking sparkly. And it's a bit like that with anything you want to grow in your own life. And yes, it's just like working out your biceps. Kindness is the same. And if you can do just a little bit every day and make it part of it's not part of a routine, because brushing your teeth isn't a routine, really. It's just something you do because you have done it for such a long time. If you can make kindness one of those, or gratefulness, it just becomes part of who you are and what you're doing.
You're heralded as someone who has been called a catalyst of change. You're such a great example of how doing small things that start change. You're very much a starter. You talked about your ADHD. You've got so many different things that you have on the cooker, the burning pots. You're very great at starting things, and then hopefully some of those, the momentum can build and go into much bigger things, like Project Autumn was one example. But another example of that, and you've mentioned it, was the one run for Boston. Mm-hmm. You talked earlier, you said you lived in Boston, you were in there for a year, but you came back to the UK and you were living over in London, was it, when 2013 bombings happened?
Yeah, no, so actually I was living in Boston after One Run for Boston. It was as a consequence of it. And it was in 2013. I was living in Devon, and I was just living in this old converted barn. And I'd been for a run with one of my friends. We were just sitting having a cup of tea in the kitchen, and we've got the radio on, whatever we're listening to, just listening to some tunes on Radio 1. And then you notice suddenly, because there's a tone change in the broadcasters, and it just drags you right in, and they started talking about the bombings that had just happened, news just in, or whatever it came in as. And
so for those who don't know, this was happening at the end of the Boston Marathon in 2013, near the finish straight.
Yeah,
a terrorist attack, several bombs went off.
Yeah,
a few people died, many people lost limbs.
Yeah, two bombs went off, and I was just listening to this unfold through the day, and my friend Kate was there as well. And I just looked at him and we said, "We got to do something." It just felt like this mass attack on a community, and especially a community that had given me so much in the past. Like my mum and dad are both runners, and that was, running is something that's kept us close. But it's something that's brought me friendship. It's brought me love. That word community that we've talked about already has brought that into my life. And it just felt like the worst attack possible. And I just thought, we got to do something about it. And we threw some ideas around in what we could do. And I think it's worth kind of noting at this point that I'm not a very organized person. I think maybe that comes across, but and to that level, like I went to the national champs for triathlon, and I turned up and looked in the back of my car and realized I'd forgotten my bike. It was still sitting in the shed, and someone lent me a bike for that race, and I went to my kit bag, and I'd packed one of my mum's size 5 shoes and one of my size 9 shoes. We both had the same shoes, and this is the kind of level of organization I have. But we came up with this idea to organize a run from LA to Boston. We kind of had this idea that we'd have this peace lily baton shaped baton, and we'd break the journey up into 10-mile segments and ask the American people to carry this baton across. And it's kind of weird really, because it came from a place of just wanting to tell the American people that we across the pond are feeling your pain, and this desire, especially in me, to do something. And it didn't really matter what it was. It just needed to be something that we could do. And as the kind of days went on from there, we're like, well, we could actually try and raise a few £1,000s for charity. And we needed, there were about 330 different sections. So we needed 330 runners, and we hope we would raise a few £1,000s. And we put it out on social media. Again, yes, this is the greatness of social media. And it took a while, but it got to America, and slowly people started signing up. And it kind of, people in America, just like I had felt, really, they had been filled with this desire to do something. But you're sitting in Oklahoma and this bomb goes off in Boston. It's a long way, 1,500 miles away or 2,000 miles away, something like this. And there isn't really anything you can do. And we presented them with this opportunity to just do something. And it was like voting with your feet, like showing your love, showing your affection, showing that your pain, showing your anger, expressing it just with your feet. And the relays just started spreading, and people would be getting in touch and saying, how can I help? And we just reply, just find as many runners as you can. Because neither of us had ever been to America. We didn't have any friends in America. So we didn't really have that network at the time. But obviously the people who lived there did.
So you hadn't lived in Boston by then?
No, I hadn't lived in Boston. No, never. Okay. This was living in Boston was a consequence of this. And
no, that's incredible. I missed that part of your story, and I just assumed you'd lived in Boston, you'd come back to the UK, and that was a community close to your heart. But this was actually,
it was the community was the running community. That was my community. It didn't matter whether you're American, Saudi Arabian, Iraqi, Argentinian. Like, the pain you go through doing races and things like that, there's just something that's shared about it. And we all know what it's like to go for a run and get a dodgy stomach and have to dash into a bush, and all those sorts of things. Those shared experiences, I think, makes the running community a very strong and powerful one.
Had you run Boston before?
No, never been to America. No experience at all.
It's so remarkable that you had this, not just had the idea, but this vision to put it into completion, from someone being thousands of miles away in a different country to set up a run across another country in aid of an event that you've never attended, a city you've never been to.
Yeah. And so cutting the story short, within 7 weeks of the bombing, it wasn't just like, it happened fast. And within 7 weeks of the bombing, we were setting off from Santa Monica in LA. And literally, we had no idea what we were doing. We knew the route. We'd got this hire car that eventually got dubbed the Stinkmobile because we were living in it, basically. Because people were running 24 hours a day. Someone was running with the baton continuously until the hope was until we got to Boston. And we arrived on that Santa Monica kind of boulevard. At that point, we still didn't know how to respond to the people we were going to meet. Are we going to be flamboyant, Dan, or are we going to be like really respectful? Is this is this a carnival or is it a funeral? Kind of the vibes. And just the first person who was there just saw us and charged over and just leapt at me and put her arms around me and just kind of screamed with joy and passion and vigor. And that moment was caught on camera, and then that became the vibe. This kind of carnival, an emotional carnival, really. And But like I was saying, we didn't know. We knew the route. We knew the people that we'd got a person nearly on every single leg, and we just set off and had hope that it might work. We put it out on social media with the hope that it might work, and I do love. I think it's always great to mention this was just a tiny idea that we pursue with passion and vigor. And if you do that, yes, of course, some are going to flop, but some can turn into something much bigger than you thought. And this is exactly what happened here. I think there's about 40 people on that first leg, and that got in all the news outlets in America. And they ended up, and as that was happening, other stages started filling up like this one, like where there was just one person, we then had 10 people, and people were kind of getting up at 8 a.m. Like a great example, someone had their dad was driving one of those big pickups with a crate of beer in. It's about 7 a.m. We had about 15 people do that leg, and at the end they all just sat in the back of the pickup and had a beer. That was the kind of vibe of it all. It was a very, very, very strong communal thing. People brought their community into the larger community, and the baton would come round the corner. We'd be waiting with the people waiting to take it on to the next stage, and the baton would come round and people would burst into tears. Yes, there's the emotion of what happened at Boston, but there was also the emotion of all of these people before have got this baton to me, and then this is now my time. And all the people that are going to have signed up to hold this baton before it gets to Boston, they're relying on me getting it from here to here. And this is where that, like I was saying, there was this kind of responsibility on you to make sure this thing happened. But in doing that, there was such relief of that sadness, anger. And very often we'd have like the fire service or the police department or the ambulance service would be with us, because they also had felt that same pain of, I should have been there to help. And of course you shouldn't have been. You were thousands of miles away. There was no way for you to be there, but that was a feeling they had. And so they would drive along with their lights flashing, but like they would sandwich the stinkmobile, the support vehicle that was getting smellier as every day went on. They'd sandwich us, and then we'd have the runner in front. The police would turn up with a badge for the person who was running, or a coin, or just something to say thank you. They were saying thank you to the runners as well. It was just such a beautiful, powerful moment, and celebs got involved and invited all the people that ran on their stage to come back to their house for a barbecue. It was just the most remarkable showing of the beauty of humanity. And yes, we started it with a seed, but the people watered it and looked after that as it grew.
This has all come from your ability to bring people together for the greater good.
Yes, cool, isn't it?
And it also it shows so much about your adventurous spirit, about how much what it takes to be a leader. Because from this idea, this inception in your mind, you were able to create not just an adventurous run across the US, but this platform that people could step onto because they didn't know what else they could do. But you created this for them so they could all join for little bits along the way. And there was a feeling of, I guess, emptiness in so many of their hearts of what they could do. But by creating this, it was just a small little thing that they could do, which would help to a bigger thing.
Yeah, I think of it as, in all these things, it's like, it's really interesting to be thought of as a leader, and it doesn't really feel like that. It just feels like I'm very good at showing people the door, and maybe I even open the door for them, but then people decide to walk through, and it's all on them.
You're an enabler.
Enabler. That's quite good. I like that. Yeah.
You create the right conditions for people to join.
Yes, it's like the human petri dish. Help people, put them in a place where they can thrive. And
I mentioned a catalyst of change. That's what you are. You are the catalyst. And I mean, I've studied science, so I understand that a catalyst doesn't change form, but it enables others to change form.
Oh, I love that. Great. Cool. Yeah, really like that. And we I'll just round up at what happened. This tiny idea with the support of everyone and the effort that everyone put into it. We arrived in Boston and we did it for 2 years. But this is 11 weeks after the bombing. We'd run across. It took 4 weeks to run across, non-stop, continuous, with all sorts of people from every single background. And everyone celebrated everyone else, which in America was just so beautiful as well at the time. And at the end, I kind of mentioned at the beginning, we hoped we'd raise like £1,000 or £2,000. But by the end of it, we'd raised 600,000. What a remarkable thing. And it's again, I still repeat, it's the beauty of humanity. We gave like you say, I opened the door for them to be their most beautiful, authentic selves. And the people at the end, we had people who'd been blown up taking part, whether they were in wheelchairs or with their crutches and I think that was testament to the people and the way that they celebrated this, rather than it being at least 1,000 people in the last stage. And the finish line was the Boston Marathon finish line where the bombs had gone off. And what testimony to the people who lost limbs, who found themselves in a pool of their own blood at that time, that they came back to revisit it, to reclaim it as their own. And wow, what the trauma they went through, and then to have that strength to stand on that finish line and say, no, this is not your line, this is our line. And wow, what inner power and strength that took as well. And it was just the most beautiful ending to see that. And actually, they came on. We organised for people to get on the people that had been affected by the bombings, truly affected, physically affected. That we organised for them to be on a bus. This is a year after we ran it a second time, and they all got onto a bus, and they didn't want to get off. And one of the guys that took part in the first one, John Odom, he gave a kind of Braveheart speech, saying, "This is you taking back that finish line, and this is going to change your life by being involved." And they all got off, and it was silence. It was. I was thinking, I was there, and I was thinking, "God, this may be a mistake, because this is really deep trauma that we are revisiting."
You feel like you're forcing it on them,
or to go back to that place of trauma. I mean, I'm not a psychologist or anything like this to be able to help them if it's not going well, but they took that baton, they took it across the finish line, and when they got back on that bus, they were, whether they had got prosthetic limbs or whether they had got crutches or whether they transformed physically for life, they were standing up singing Sweet Caroline, and the change in them for that 1 microsecond was worth all the effort of the years that, the first time and the second time around, to see that change in them. Wow. It gives me goosebumps all over my body just to think of it, and to have been a catalyst in that. Wow.
What does this say about the act of doing, or in its contrast, the act of not doing? And people have these ideas in their heads. I'm party to many crazy ideas, which I never act on, mostly to save my own sanity. And I know sometimes that the time and the energy can take on. I think you have to be very careful, certainly if you're a creative and your idea is driven onto picking and choosing the right idea to go ahead. But here is you having this idea that had you not acted on it, none of what you've just told me would have happened. Those people would not have had that platform to join you. You wouldn't have had those people going through that experience of reclaiming that finish line. And that all came down to just that one small step, or I guess it was a big step, but it was small in its action to start that process.
Yeah.
And if you hadn't done that, I mean, do you ever think about the impact that you would have had by not doing something?
Yeah, it's interesting to put that, because I don't think I have. And I like to put that out there because, you know, whatever it is you're doing, whatever that idea is, it feels like it's the hardest thing. And I do know that it's a superpower of mine. And because I can put myself down for being really disorganized and forgetful and dyslexic and ADHD like, but I do have a superpower, and that is, if it feels right, I can literally just plow through a mountain to make something happen. And combine that with someone who can be organized, then you've really got like Kate was much more organized than I was, probably a little bit too organized. She was holding the strings very tightly, but the combination was absolute amazing beauty. But like you say, like if you don't do these things, I guess you could sit back and think, well, someone else will do something that these people can do. And definitely people did. We weren't the only thing that was going on. But it these little ideas can transform society. Like we united America. It was just the most. Well, we have a Navajo Native American person passing on to a white collar worker kind of thing, and who would never ever have a conversation. And because of the baton, they had a conversation. Like, you know, and there were times when there was a rival American football team's supporters. They'd be wearing the shirts that they represent, but I think, and they'd hug. Never hug normally, because they're two different factions of supporters. But that sporting thing also went into the, you know, life, and there were people connecting who would never ever connect, and they still connect now. They're still talking now. They're still meeting up. They travel across the states. People will say, "Oh, I'm coming here to do a running race," for instance, and they'll get people saying, "Oh, come, you're a one runner. You can come and stay with me," and the community lives on. It's amazing.
And you wrote a book about this experience.
Yeah,
a widely successful book.
I mean, I wrote a book about cycling from London to India, which we haven't actually talked about, and that went on to be a bestseller. I'm a blooming dyslexic. I was in reading group at school, and I'll just sometimes, I'm in a real good mood today. I think you've put me in a good mood. You've made me feel really wonderful. Of what an example to all those kids who are suffering from dyslexia. Like, it's not that you can't write or your ability to take in what you're reading is bad or anything. It's just the way your brain's programmed. But that same way your brain is programmed is probably what's going to make you do something slightly different later on in life that transforms people's lives. And that went on to be a bestseller, and I had to go to awards evening. I won awards for writing, which like blows my mind. And the book about running across America was my second book, and it was a little bit more niche because it told the story. And it was much harder for me to write because I asked all the people that took part to tell me their story, and some of the people were the people affected by the bombings, and some of them were just everyday Joe Blogs. And I kind of brought those stories together and connected them and intertwined them, and that was a much harder process for me. But it's a really lovely book to it's a lovely memory for everyone that took part anyway, if nothing else.
This is not all heroes wear capes.
Yeah, not all superheroes wear capes is the
Not all
second one.
superheroes,
Yeah.
so yeah. And then the first one, you've gone too far this time.
Yeah. Yeah.
An adventure that started it all, cycling from London to southern India.
Yeah. Yeah. That was at a time when social media didn't exist. You weren't, you go onto Instagram now, go on your feed for 3 minutes, and you've find someone doing something mental. Hardest geezer, for example, running the length of Africa. But at this time, social media wasn't existing like that. And I was just like, this is something deep within. And probably, like we talked about earlier on, like my upbringing of just be yourself. This was a deep, deep desire within me. I wanted to go and do a long cycle ride and raise money for charity. And I managed to make that happen. And what a joyous, that was the start of everything. You're 6 months on your own, really, on a bike. It was like kind of like meditation.
Let's talk about this briefly. I want to move on to your wild running adventures that you enable. But while we're on the topic of your cycle, there's one story that I highlighted that I when researching you, I thought was quite significant. It was a story. You said you were welcomed into people's homes with open arms, or quite regularly. But one instance, you were invited to sleep in a room as big as a single bed with 3 other men.
Mm.
And when the chai wala came,
it's
like a tea, is it like a brew?
Yeah, the kind of the tea seller, basically. Yeah.
Oh, okay. You said you weren't allowed to pay. 7 men put into the pot. 2 cups of tea were bought for 10 pence each. 1 cup was given to you. The other cup was poured into a saucer and shared amongst the other 7 men.
Mm.
And you said, people with nothing shared everything they had with me. These moments accumulated over time and absolutely changed my ideas of belongings and money. It's far more rewarding to share what you have than to hold on to it.
Yeah. It was in the Ravi slum, the biggest slum in India, I believe, in Mumbai. And I just got welcome to stay at a family's house. They cooked for me, and then and I went to see the kind of the youth leaders of the slum. They're kind of people that are, because the slum, there's lots of business within the slum, but they're just all houses just built out of whatever you can get your hands on, whether it's steel or whether it's cardboard or whether it's wood or whatever. I stayed the night in this tiny little steel, corrugated steel room, and you're like lying next to, your skin is touching on the left and on the right. And and then I went to see the youth leaders of the slum, and this was when they're young adults, and that's when they put, it was like the tea was maybe 15 pence, and they bought 2. That was what they all put their money in to buy 2 cups of tea. What? Now, I'm carrying a camera that probably is £500 or something like this. And of course that wasn't the only sign of my wealth, but there was just no way they were letting me pay for a cup of tea. And it was, and this happened time and time again. This one stuck out for me, I think, because of the slum, because of their living conditions, because of what I saw in that slum, the hygiene standards, but also what you see is kids running around with smiles on their faces, adults laughing, everyone's living on top of each other, but a nod, a wave, a laugh with the people opposite you. It was very, very, very powerful moment. And they maybe this is a moment that has affected my life, because in the same way as we were talking about, I was doing these things and I was just putting my rent onto credit cards and all that sort of stuff. That's what they kind of did to me, really. They didn't have anything, but they gave, and that's probably what I've been doing all my life.
Later on, you noted that when you were arriving into your 40s, you didn't have a house, didn't have a pension, you said you didn't really own anything at all. But here you are having these incredible experiences in life, setting up these wonderful communities, enabling people to join you on the adventure. What does this tell you about happiness and possession?
Oh, wow. I mean, don't get me wrong, those things, when I'm not feeling on top of the world, the fact that I don't own anything, I don't have a pension, they become sources of anxiety. And that isn't something I would wish on anyone, to have that level of anxiety about it. But I think that's just when I'm getting caught, my brain waves are getting caught in the trappings of society. And definitely I would like to have those things, but would I change my life to have those things? No, absolutely no way on earth. The richness that you earn from someone saying you've changed their life, or wrapping their arms around you and giving you a hug because they're just so overwhelmed by your presence. Like say with the run, that's how people responded. It was just beautiful. And if I've said, I think it's important to sometimes talk about death, because you never know when it's around the corner. I've had a few friends die, and I think that's made me realize, wow, you need to make sure that people know what you think about them and how much you appreciate them at all times. And I was actually having a conversation where I was telling someone very close to me that if I passed away now, there would be absolutely zero regret. If you could say change anything, I just wouldn't change it. Wouldn't change a thing. And that's a very powerful place to be, isn't it? That you would be, and I don't even fear it, because I've lived 1,000 lifetimes within my life. And yes, I wouldn't mind having a really nice house, or even just a house. But it's more important. Everything else I'm doing is more important.
Well, the heart of who you are is being this catalyst within a community that enables people to have fun and join you on adventures. And that's something you've taken to greater lengths in recent years by creating these really wild running adventures in exciting places around the world. And I mean, they are adventurous in all their forms, going to a remote place and running across it.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably it's as close as I can to allow people to experience the life that I've experienced. And it's also selfish. I've done lots of cool things, like quite often with people from, like, in America, or Project Awesome. That was something I did in London. And I moved to Sheffield, and I'm in this situation where the people I have had these experiences with are no longer around me. And we touched upon the cycle ride to India. You do that on your own. These adventures are on your own. Unless you're doing a podcast, you can talk about them. Like, your nearest and dearest may allow you to talk about it for about 10 minutes before they want to move on, because they haven't experienced it. They haven't experienced all that emotion, that the awe, the excitement, the fear, the disgust. They haven't experienced all that. So it leaves you a little bit, I wouldn't say lonely, but just like slightly outside of everything else. And I just had this idea that, wouldn't it have been mad cool if I'd had 40 other people doing this ride with me and we'd shared it? And then we meet up every year, we go to the pub and we talk non-stop about that adventure. But of course that didn't happen, so I couldn't do it. But I fortunately had a phone call with someone, another person who's, it's called Nick, and he's done some cool adventures. And we were just talking about, I think he was asking me to do a voiceover for one of his videos or something like this. And he said to me, what are you doing next? And I was like, well, I'm not really sure. I was at a kind of loose end. And I was like, but I've got this idea that I'd really love to do an adventure with other people, something like running across Iceland. And he just paused for a second and he just said, Dan, I've just planned a route across Iceland, but I don't have anyone to do it with. And I was like, holy smoke. About 9 months after that conversation, I'd put out on social media to say who wants to join us. And much like everything else, it all happens very, very fast. And we were setting off from the north of Iceland, running to the south of Iceland. And that was the first time we did it. We had people, Brian, a Scottish guy, swears a lot, beautiful human. He had been a big smoker, fairly big drinker. He wasn't your natural running physique. And he said, Dan, can I come with you? And I was like, Brian, if you think you've got this, I think you've got it. Let's do it. And he's the person I remember when I think about that first one, because he, at the very southern tip where we first reached salty water again, I remember just seeing him looking into the distance, like looking up, like almost into the sky, speaking to the universe. But he was just like so lost in his own word. And he was like, I've run across Iceland. I've run across Iceland, with his Scottish accent. And he'd run 9 marathons in 10 days. Brutal, brutal weather for that trip. We went too late in the year. We didn't realise that Iceland was so far north. Really, that's, again, that organisation level. And we thought it was a one-off, and we just thought, wow, this is great. We're going to be able to have this lovely experience and then talk about it afterwards. But afterwards, we got inundated with people saying, when are you doing it again? Can I please come? I really think I need this in my life. And we organised a second one, and then we've organised a third one. And I think this year we're on to our 4th or 5th iteration of running across Iceland. But it's the people that ran across Iceland, and then what are we going to do next? Because we don't want to do that again, because it was pretty hard. And we've done runs across Tajikistan. We've gone through Nepal. We've been to Patagonia, and it's still very much a passion project. It's like me and Nick meet up. We're like, where would we like to go to? Because if we want to go, it probably means other people want to go. And generally I say, oh, this is where I'd like to go. Like Patagonia has been a dream since I was very young. And then Nick gets to work, and he's much more organised than I am. And he finds this route, and we kind of sketch it all out together and how it's all going to work. And the people that come, I think it feels a bit like Project Awesome, really. Very much like Project Awesome. And that's definitely something that's in my mind right now in seeing these similarities. People turn up because they want to go to Patagonia, or they want to test their bodies, or prove to dad that they can do this run, or, all the things that the drivers in people. But just like you're saying, and we've mentioned 1,000 times this podcast, the thing they're struck by is the community. And they've shared this amazing experience, sometimes incredibly hard experience. And they're left with this community that transcends all levels of their life. And they start finding work opportunities through it, or they find relationships through it. We've had people get engaged. We've had people get together on these trips. And they start as an individual, and they end as a whole, and this kind of connection to 20 other people, or this kind of, but it kind of goes beyond that, because they're connected to Iceland, and they're kind of connected to the world, and they feel connection to nature and the universe around them. It's almost, maybe it actually is not almost, it's spiritual. And the toughness of it just makes you appreciate life in a really, really special way. I always joke that those people, when they're having their breakfast and they get 2 spoons of peanut butter rather than 1, it feels like the best moment of their life. And they are so in this moment living. Whereas, we spend a lot of time worrying about things outside of this, and when you're on the trips, you're engulfed by just living, and that is beautiful. And just like all those things we talked about very early on in the conversation about happiness, I think, like you put your phone down, you're helping people, you're saying thank you to people, you are living in the moment, you're finding the positive in what's going on, you're not dwelling on the negatives, and it makes people feel like they're being their best version of themselves. And it's a very, very, very rewarding thing to be part of. And again, it's just another community that we do. We have a filmmaker come with us every time, and those films get to go to adventure shows, and then we all get together at the adventure show. And so the people that have been in Nepal come to see the video of the people in Patagonia, and then these little groups of tribes become a greater tribe. And it's an amazing experience for me being once again in the middle of that. And sometimes as the leader, you might feel a little bit outside of it, but really you're not. You're in the middle. And all these people at any singular moment, if you ask them, they have your back. And that's something I need to keep telling myself. I'm in the center of this, and just like I'd do anything for them, they'd do anything for me. And it's really, really very special.
And what an accomplishment, especially with your Great Norse Run, the run across Iceland, is that you do get to run across an entire country.
Yeah. Yeah, you start with a paddle in the north, and you finish with a paddle or a swim, depending on what the weather's doing. Because we do it in August now. We did it in September the first time round. And you can be sunbathing at one moment, and then it can be snowing. It really is a wild, wild country. So you dip your toe, you run 209 miles or whatever it is, and dip your toe the other side. But you're running past glaciers. Sometimes there's exploding volcanoes. There's a desert we run through, this silver desert, and then you come back from the desert into this kind of beautiful green, lush areas with massive waterfalls, and it's absolutely dreamy. And it actually feels, because the north is a green area and the south is a very green area and the middle is silver. And it kind of feels like you go from this version of yourself and then you're taken away in this desert. There's nothing. And then when you come back to the green area, you're just reborn again as a maybe not as a better version of you, but as a different version of you. And that's, you just see it. People come back, and we're not taking people who are ultra distant. You're not taking your Damien Halls or your top class runners as a general rule. They're just normal people. And some people walk, some people run. And I think most people start it thinking they're not going to finish. I can't do this. It's just no way I can. And when they do, they readdress the barrier, the boundary they put in at their physical ability. They're like, oh, that where I had it is absolutely ridiculous. It's way further. I have way more ability. And by showing the vulnerability of that barrier in their life, makes them look at all other barriers differently. And so you hear time after time after time, people coming back and saying where they've moved the barrier in their social life, in their working life, in their relationships, given themselves more credit, because we're all way more capable than we first envisage.
They sound incredible, and it's something which, I mean, to run across Iceland on your own, the logistics of planning something like that, the need of support vehicles and crew sounds like a nightmare. But this is what you're doing. You're enabling this for the people to come in, so that all the logistics are sorted. Mm-hmm. And although I do know from some of the past runs that it's still an adventure, in that you don't always quite know what's going to happen every day, and you have to move with the weather and the conditions, because you're in these incredibly wild places that you have to respect them as well. That becomes part of that adventure as well. It's not just a simple race where there's a to B finish line at the end. There's different turns of path that you might have and different river crossings you might have to do or not do.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's kind of the simplicity of it is that you've got to run this distance, and that's the only, if that is all you want to do, that's all you have to do, because the food's taken care of, the accommodation is taken care of, and then the simple tents. It's not high living, and we've got everything we need because you can't refuel anything. So we can't take anything that's too big. Hence why two scoops of peanut butter is a dream in the morning, kind of thing. But just like you say, it's never been the same. It's never the same. And just depending on what the weather's doing, depending on what's happening with the winds, completely and utterly changes each and every adventure. And actually, the biggest influencing factor are the people. And one to the other is completely and utterly different because every human being is different. And, that's why every year I'm looking forward to this date in August when I can meet the crew. Like we meet online and everything like this, but that's not the same as when you meet on the start line and everyone is being vulnerable and everyone's really pumped and everyone's just a little bit scared. And that first kind of moment is such a relief, such an expression of all those emotions. There's a beautiful connection between the people in the slum in Mumbai and the people on our trips, in that you have less at this moment. You don't have your phones with you. You may have your phone with you, but you might not have reception. And you've only got the clothes on your back and a few extras because you can't bring a big suitcase because otherwise we wouldn't be able to carry it across. And you have less. And you somehow just appreciate everything so much more, but also you give so much more. People come with some jelly sweets or some toffees or some dried fish or whatever it is. And it would be very easy to sit there in your tent and just gobble those up yourself because you're really blooming hungry. But people aren't doing that. They're sharing. Everything gets shared with everyone else. And I've never seen that kind of mirroring of the people in the slum, because we are taking a lot away from you when you come on the trip, or you're taking it away from yourself. But yet there's so much more happiness in those faces, and there's so much more joy about what you do have at that point. And just like those guys with the chai wallah, it's really nice.
And for someone who doesn't think that they can even contemplate running across Iceland, but they're still a runner, and they're curious.
I mean, they could just be a walker and just enjoy going out for a walk. And it's that, I think, if you're curious and you would like to get involved or to even have a conversation, it's you got to think of it. Iceland at that time of year, there's almost 24 hours of sunlight. It's getting light at kind of 4 a.m, just like the summer in England, really, just a little bit longer. And all you have to do is cover those miles. So whether everyone walks, even the top class runners that we've had come along, they walk some of it because it's stupid not to. And actually slowing things down to a walk, whether it's only on the hills. When I did it myself, I was doing it with a lady, George, was a very good runner, and we did a lot of running of it together. And she was like, Dan, she really mothered me. And she was saying, we're on a hill. And you're like, well, it's just a kind of little bit of a slope. You're like, no, it's a hill, we're walking. And it's the way you preserve your strength and things like this. And all you've got to do during the day is cover those miles. And the views, the scenery, the people, they just take you away from anything you're experiencing in your body. And I think if you can, like Brian, I think he'd only done a 10K before he did it. The guy was smoking and drinking, and he made it. And so if you are curious and you're listening, definitely reach out to me. And we've set up a link for the podcast. The website is runwild.global. And then if you do /GBA,
I'll link it below. Yeah.
Yeah. Put the link in. We've set it up so anyone who comes through the podcast is getting £100 off the ticket price. And but really just reach out to me. It's probably easier from my website, dannybent.com. Just start a conversation. I really love people. And I think that probably comes through in all the things I'm doing. I just love to be around people. And I'm one of those people that could go to an airport and just watch the arrivals lounge and just see people coming in. And so reach out to me. I love talking to people. And if you want to chat on email, that's great. But if you want to have an actual conversation with me, that's better for me. And even if you don't want to do it, just give me a call, because I like people. It'd be fun.
And that curiosity is usually that little spark, which just needs that little bit of attention just to help build into the fire. And if someone has that curiosity, then you are the rest of the fire that could build that from within. And I'm a huge fan of multi-day tours. I've done a lot by bike. I've done some fairly extreme distances by bike, carrying a lot of my stuff when I cycled across the UK. And it does seem like a huge amount of distance to do. But when you give yourself the entire day to do that, like you said, if that's just your only focus, then it does suddenly become achievable, because you don't have to worry about going to work and going to the gym or walking the dog, any of those other things. You just got this one focus in your day, and that's to get to the end of the set miles.
And what a great lesson it is in life, even in that you just break it down. We always do 8 mile segments. So you run 8 miles, you might get breakfast after, then you run 8 miles, then you get lunch, then you run 8 miles. So you've only got to make it 8 miles. And within that 8 miles, you can kind of break that down as well. And you can apply that to so many parts of your life. Just got to get this little bit done and just focus on that bit. And then you can move on to the next part. And something which is really interesting for us, and we're just like keeping an eye on it, is that a lot of the people that come are on a journey anyway already, as kind of a emotional or spiritual journey, or they've lost a loved one, or they have they're just feeling a bit lost. And actually what you do, you lose yourself in Iceland, and in doing so you find yourself. And like I say, you get that rebirth at the bottom, where you seem to have lost a few layers or a few of the weights you're carrying, and you're a lighter person. And yeah, it's a joy to see.
Well, I wish you many more years of these types of adventures. I think it's great because you've been an enabler your entire life, and just to give someone this, the confidence and a platform to do something that is incredibly adventurous, but hugely rewarding by the achievements, is fantastic, because so many of us dream of these long distances, or we see other individuals who go do it solo, and we wish we could have that within ourselves. But actually, it's nice when someone can help create that space to do that. But it's also even better when you can do it with a group.
Yeah. And you can be surrounded by people that believe in you, that you can do it. 20, 30 people who all are saying, yes, you can. That is a very, very powerful place to be.
No, that's interesting, because when you're on your own, there's so much that you can just think of all the negative things about it.
Yeah.
You just want to stop. You think you should stop. You think you haven't got what it takes. But it's everyone else's reflection of that. It's everyone else's, what's the word? It's everyone else's...
positive affirmation or something like that.
Thank you. It's everyone else's positive affirmation that helps build that within you, just like you have done with me.
Great.
I thank you so much for your time, Danny. It's been such a profound conversation. I've learned a lot. I really hope to see there be some inkling of Project Awesome in Sheffield. And should I dare tempt fate and say, if there is, I will come one early morning and have retribution for my biggest regret for my early life in London.
Yeah, I think that would be absolutely awesome.
I look forward to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for tuning in. If you want to find out more information about any of the guests, please check out the show notes, where you will also find links to things mentioned in the conversations. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please take a look through the past recordings. There's so many more incredible stories for you to find, and I can't wait for you to enjoy them. Thank you.